So we just got out of seeing The Batman. You saw it before I did, Yaroslav. I
Yep.
saw it just a few days ago. You were telling me how much you wanted to get my opinion on the movie because you really, really liked it, right?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think it's a good movie just for, you know, the recent climate of films. This kind of stands out. You know, when you're talking about
Oh,
like
for sure.
Marvel movies, this is a real. It's an interesting one, and I really liked it for that.
Yeah, so would you say this is one of the best Batman movies ever made?
Uh, yeah. Well, behind the scenes conversations, we talk a lot about the Christopher Nolan movies, and I'm sure a lot of people agree those are like top notch
Right.
pieces of cinema in terms of superhero films. But Batman Begins has always held the mantle for me, and I think this stands toe to toe with it. I have reasons for it, but this is definitely up there. Like they're just both competing at the top right there.
Dude, what's really interesting, it's funny you bring up Batman Begins, is because the look and feel of that film is so different from The Dark Knight and The Dark Knight Rises. And the word that you used to describe the movie to me was grunge, which was ironically what I always thought Batman Begins cinematography and the orange fog and everything in the Narrows. I always thought that movie was like the music video Smells Like Teen Spirit, which we're going to get into a lot later on. But I agree with you. It is definitely one of the best Batman movies ever made. I would say top 3 for me. I really think that when The Dark Knight came out, that really revolutionized how people did superhero movies, and you had a lot of people try to reboot their own franchise into dark, gritty kind of adjacent stuff like that. Even though Batman Begins did it first, Batman Begins wasn't anywhere near as big of a hit as The Dark Knight was, which is really interesting because this is not The Dark Knight 4, it's its own movie, but in a way you can totally see how the Christopher Nolan stuff seeped into it, which that stuff being so good, it just, of course, this one being pulled off well with the direction, the plot, the characters, and cinematography and everything. It's going to be one of the best Batman movies. So yeah, I definitely think it's one of the best for sure.
No, it's Matt Reeves. So far, his filmography hasn't been. I don't think he's had any dull entries. I know some people aren't a fan of Cloverfield. That's kind of like a divide.
Oh yeah, I'm not a fan of Cloverfield. Yeah. But I don't hold that against him. Dude, he did the reboots to Planet of the Apes, which were incredible.
Yeah, those. I mean, those movies are very well received, and you can see some of that kind of tone with his vision for Batman. And I wish he did a Jurassic movie.
Yeah, we were talking about that behind the scenes. It'd be so cool to see him do his own Jurassic Park trilogy.
Oh yeah, I think he's a perfect fit. It's not, I like his the mood that he presents in his film, excuse me. But I just think he's he's got a brilliant eye, and he's very creative as a director, and he's also he knows how to ground things well. So I think just for those reasons, I'd like to see him take on Jurassic. I think he can nail a lot of the aesthetic that people look for, and Colin's been doing a pretty good job, but Matt's kind of a little bit more seasoned, I think. So.
Oh, for sure, and there are also two different voices. Colin's, Colin comes from the very, operational theme park, grand action sense, whereas Matt Reeves, if you look at his Apes movies, he grounds his science fiction and his villains. Well, we talked about Woody Harrelson and the Planet of the Apes, dude, and he does a really good job in this movie too with the villains. Which actually I wanted to go into the whole direction of this film that Matt Reeves did, because tonally, I guess you could say it's the closest to the Christopher Nolan movies, but there is that grungy sort of pull with the Bruce Wayne character, which we'll get into later. But the structure of this movie is very interesting because it plays out kind of like a mystery. There's all these elements that keep building to reveal something, the full plot towards the end. But the direction is very similar to those Planet of the Apes films that he worked on. But also, I would say, it's a really interesting combination of what Christopher Nolan did with his trilogy with Matt Reeves' sensibilities, although I do feel like he injected a little bit of the Tim Burton-esque stuff in here.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to hear what you think about that too, because I don't want to just go on saying this is like Matt Reeves aping Christopher Nolan, because I don't feel like that's what it is. Although I can see him taking stuff from that, but his direction is so good. And a lot of people, dude, film criticism is dead. Like, nobody talks about anything outside of screenwriting now, and they've never seen screenplays for these movies. They don't talk about tone. Right. They don't talk about cinematography. They don't talk about like set design or the costumes or the filming or the acting performances half the time. And this movie nails all of that, and I really want to give him credit for it, because I think it's pretty freaking great.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's so funny because, you know, I'll start by saying, like, when the movie was first announced, you're like, oh, Matt Reeves is going to be doing a Batman movie. And the first thing I thought, I was like, I'm sure a lot of people were like, another Batman movie? Like,
oh, for sure. I was right there too, man. Yeah.
Yeah, because you wrapped up Christopher Nolan's amazing trilogy, and then, you know, they capitalized on the Batman hype a couple of years later with Batman vs. Superman with Ben Affleck coming in, which his version of, like, the Frank Miller, you know, brute, like Gladiator-esque Batman is pretty cool. You know, it's its own thing, which I like that. You know, as many Batman movies as we get, they're all pretty unique. If you pay attention to the details of the storytelling,
absolutely,
and depictions. But I was like, all right, here we go, another Batman movie, and then you see Robert Pattinson cast, and I for some reason, like, I was on board with it. I'm like, you know what? I like when they cast the unexpected actor, because that happened with Adrian Brody when they cast him as the main lead in Predators.
Like, also Michael Keaton in the first Batman.
Well, yeah,
movie.
Exactly. And that happens with every Batman cast. And you're like, oh, he's gonna screw it up. And then, like,
yeah, that's true.
And then people like it, and I'm always like, I'm for it, like. Robert Pattinson's a very talented actor. He's had a pretty good, just filmography recently, with The Lighthouse and The Tenet and stuff like that. So, like, I was like, yeah, that's cool. And I just a lot of the world I wasn't totally sold yet. Like, I was like, yeah, the suit looks like another tactical.
So, I agree. I think sometime I heard that the movie was being written while they were filming, and I don't know if that was true. It's probably not true, but, like, I heard of some production issues behind the scenes. Whatever happened, it didn't freaking matter, because, like, when you get to the actual film, by the way, the reveal of Batman at the beginning of this movie was pretty great, wasn't it?
Everything was so masterfully done. Like, everything was done with clear intention. There was a clear direction with what Matt Reeves and his team, like, how they wanted to, this is Gotham for the millionth time. You had all these TV shows and shit like that, where it's like you're kind of oversaturated with the character in this world, but, like, this is like a cinematic event for one thing. So, like, it's got a bigger budget behind it, and so you're naturally curious how they're gonna present this world. And like, just the whole, like, first 10-15 minutes, whatever it is, where it's just kind of illustrating the current circumstances of the current atmosphere of, like, the criminal world. Like, everyone's afraid. And, like, the signal is the first thing you see of Batman, and, like, the play on, like, the fear of fear of shadows and stuff. It's like, it's right up there with what the comics always how they depicted Batman. He lives in the shadows and stuff like that, but it's so well
it's illustrated perfectly.
Exactly.
Like,
yes.
It's what it reminded me of, because I'm actually a really big Batman fan. I've got, like, loads of graphic novels and comic books of Batman, and, like, everyone that does one of these movies, they're like, oh, we based it off of Year One and The Long Halloween, and, like, they did, but, like, this one, I really like the fact that he was, like, a couple years in, and they didn't base it off of Batman Year Two, which I wish that someone would do one day, because I love Batman Year Two. But, like, this movie really went into the direction of, like, a young, I'll tell you one thing, man. They give you like a young Bruce Wayne who's probably like, what do you think, like 27, 28 years old, right?
Oh,
or
yeah.
like,
I mean, he's definitely not past like.
yeah, so he's like our age.
Yeah.
And then another thing I loved about the world building and the version of Gotham that you were like talking about was like, you see it through his eyes, and the way that they kind of portrayed that was through the Nirvana song "Something in the Way," and I don't constantly throughout this film. This is such a different take on Bruce Wayne and Batman, which I really like too, because like he's almost jaded and cynical to the point of it's almost like he doesn't care at all, yet he actually cares more than it seems anybody else in this whole city except for maybe Jim Gordon. But like you look at the way that, you know, he's got this like 28 years old guy who like Kurt Cobain died around the time he was born, then kind of similar to you and I,
right?
And then like, you know, they've got the whole thing where like his parents died around the time he was 8, and Thomas Wayne was like some sort of politician, which politics was a very big part of this movie, along with corruption. Damn dog. Anyways,
All good.
Like it's just really interesting to see how this movie played with the portrayal of Bruce Wayne in this new world, because like you said, like it's very interesting to see how they depict Gotham City. We've got the Gotham City in the Burton movies, which is like 1940s Gothic.
Right.
The Gotham City in the Joel Schumacher films was like neon lights and
Like
very
SLA.
yeah. By the way, I love Escape from LA.
yeah.
But anyways, like you get to this one, and it's almost a combination of a bunch of different Batman films that you've seen before, and to see it through a jaded Bruce. He's not the Bruce Wayne that Christian Bale played. Like he's not that kind of guy. Like,
no.
and I really like that about this movie.
Yeah, it's funny because that was I've seen a lot of critiques online, and just even friends, you know, friends of mine. You know, a lot of people have seen the movie, so there's some people coming through and kind of giving their critique that I don't personally agree with, and I'm thinking about one critique in particular here. It's what you're talking about. Is
they didn't like the whole Bruce Wayne portrayal?
Well, this is what they're saying. Is like, well, okay, Bruce Wayne is moody and broody, and so is, you know, Batman. Obviously, that's like
right.
Sick. But the point is, or at least I think the way the filmmakers want us to look at it is, you know, this is like the first couple years of Bruce Wayne, you know, pursuing this vigilante lifestyle, and he's got so much. Sorry, it's a really loud dirt bike drove by. He's got all this hate and anger built up and bottled up,
right?
And you know, he's, you know, there's always that, you know, the old saying of like, oh, he is Batman, his mask is Bruce Wayne.
Yeah, and you told me that before I went into the movie, and you're absolutely right, because like it's almost like he doesn't feel completely comfortable when he's not in the Batman outfit sometimes.
Exactly. Yes, exactly.
And I like that though. Like I really do feel like this version of Bruce Wayne. I don't like when people say that Batman's a psychopath or a sociopath, because I don't feel I think Batman, like Bruce Wayne, is just a pissed off dude. I also love in this movie, by the way, when he talks to other characters like Catwoman, where she's like, you know, all these white privileged assholes like all over the place, and she's talking to Batman about it, assuming that like he would you know, feel some sort of similar way. And then the Riddler later on says like, Bruce Wayne isn't an orphan sitting in his tower, you know, like it's so ironic. And I think that kind of plays into the whole sarcastic, sardonic way that Bruce goes about the movie. Is like everybody thinks that like there's this class thing where like the truly smart people, the people that are the downtrodden and oppressed, are like the low income, low class orphan people that have had a chip on their shoulder, like Selena Kyle, like the Riddler. And you've got literally the one guy that cares the most about this, you know, city, Bruce Wayne, is the guy that was born silver spoon in hand, and he doesn't let it faze him. He's not like a bitch about it, complaining, but it's an irony to the whole thing. And I love the way that Matt Reeves said when he wrote the movie, he was listening to Something in the Way, and the way they incorporated that into the movie, by the way, I thought was perfect. He really does encapsulate a guy that has just lost faith in the world, and he's like trying, like he's really trying to be the best Batman he can be, which I really liked. I don't get those critiques. I thought that he was great in this film.
No, I mean that's because we understand where they're coming from with like the direction, and the I can see where people are like, oh, like it doesn't make sense because like he goes to that to the funeral and he's so moody and gloomy and he rarely comes out of Wayne Manor,
right?
And so like it's like you can put two and two together, like, oh, maybe that guy's Batman.
I don't know that Michael Keaton kind of did a similar thing in his Batman movies. I think it's just like that might be looking way too into it because, and I'll throw this at you too. One of my favorite moments in the movie is like when he's interrogating the Riddler, and he thinks the Riddler knows that he's Bruce Wayne and is like screwing with him. He's like, Bruce Wayne, and like. And then he figures out that he doesn't know that that's him, which plays into the themes of this movie are great, man. It's these people that have lost faith in Gotham or the politicians and the people running the city because there's so much corruption. And, they think of a guy like Bruce Wayne's just another brick in the wall for that kind of thing. And you can just totally see that irony of Batman being like, he's the hero, and like they're never going to accept it or understand it because like this movie had so much. We talk about good and evil and stuff, which is definitely a real thing, but Bruce Wayne, like, he interprets everything through like a gray area. And another thing I really liked about the movie is towards the end when the song Something in the Way comes back again and Michael Giacchino uses his score to kind of like back it up. There's all this imagery of Batman saving everyone in daylight. And there's something about that we've never really seen, and it almost reminded me of like the firefighters and policemen helping people from like 9/11. That imagery, that's like a really hopeful kind of portrayal. I loved it. I really couldn't get enough of that stuff.
Yeah, no, it's funny you mentioned that because I talked to one of my friends I went to go see the movie with, and he brought up a good point where he's like, I might be jumping ahead here. I apologize, but like,
no, you're fine.
This movie kind of sort of has like two endings.
Oh, it has multiple endings for sure. It's a Return of the King kind of Batman movie.
Yeah, exactly. And like, where Batman brings Falcone out to the light and the Riddler takes him out, like, and then Riddler's thrown in Arkham. That's, for me, that'd be like the perfect finale to that movie. It's a good ending. A lot resolved, the main mastermind is thrown in prison, so like, and that could have been a good cliffhanger, when when he's bringing up the Bruce Wayne thing and then realize he doesn't know who he is. But anyway, then the movie has another ultimate finale.
Yeah, but I got to be honest, I loved all of that.
Oh no, I did too. But I meant why I brought that up is because I was talking to my friend and we were kind of talking about that. And he was like, the the majority of the movie is Bruce Wayne getting vengeance through the entity of Batman. It's his personal vendetta, and he has justice for himself. And then this entire second finale with the Riddler, flooding Gotham, and then like Batman now actually has to save the masses. Like this is like bigger than anything he's pursued for, like so far most of his crimes have been one-to-one.
Right.
Nothing on a cataclysmic scale, which this obviously was. And he's like, this is like, that was signaling Batman's like, and more actually Bruce Wayne's realization that he needs to be a symbol of hope for Gotham, where it's not just for him, it's for the people. And that's, when he's lighting the flare and guiding the people out, that's like the turning point
of him as a character.
And that's like such an amazing evolution. If people like realize that when watching this movie, like that's where I'm like, okay, it's very necessary that this second finale happened, because
I can understand the critique over structure kind of. I mean, we talk a lot about the Lost World Jurassic Park and how people complain about the San Diego stuff, but I think this goes on way longer than like that San Diego stuff did,
yeah.
and like the reason it exists is to wrap up more of the Riddler story and to finish Bruce Wayne's kind of, I don't want to call it a transformation, but like development into Batman.
Exactly.
Yeah. Speaking of the Riddler, by the way, so this guy was crazy. Like,
yeah.
This is the weirdest portrayal, and it actually scared me a lot. Like, he is a very creepy individual. There's a lot of Silence of the Lambs kind of stuff in here. The portrayal of the Riddler in this movie is completely different from Jim Carrey's Batman Forever. However, I did like that they incorporated some of the stuff like, you were supposed to understand, you know? I'm a big fan of that stuff in the movie, and I do think that, like, I don't want to hold it against the film, but I will say I really wish that they used at least one scene where he was in the Riddler outfit, but I'm assuming that they're going to save that for a sequel because they do kind of tee up the whole thing with Joker when they're at Arkham Asylum. But yeah, what did you think about the portrayal of Riddler here? Like, what are your thoughts on him?
Well, again, I got to go back to how I was saying I wasn't sold on Batman until I saw this movie, like just the Batman, and the same same goes for the Riddler. Where I was like, okay, they're just trying to be grounded, and like this is what they came up with: a guy in a fucking, excuse my language, a guy in a coat with some leather mask, a dominatrix looking mask on.
Yeah, it's a scary looking thing.
But it, I mean, in the context of the film, and also when if you pay attention to the finale when these guys like Twitch streamer like subscribers.
Yeah, dude, that was what made it even creepier to me, is that it grounded that guy in a. That was creepy.
Very current, social media. It is very unsettling because of how, like, it introduces. I mean, I hope we don't see anything like this in our reality, but like, there's implications for that kind of reach. If for like crazy people, like
I know, and like he thought that it was almost like that was his group. Like he was an outcast and he found his people there. And
exactly.
That was unsettling. I took my sister, her husband, and my father to see this movie, and they were laughing when they.
Oh yeah, well, because he's so human.
No, they were laughing at the reveal of the URL thing.
Oh yeah.
They were like, "Oh, he could just go to his website."
Yeah, no. Well, it's funny how because like the riddles were, I like the riddles in this movie. They were.
Some of them were really easy.
Yeah, they were easy, but some of them were like right under your nose. Mm-hmm. Where it's like it's so easy that it was difficult for them to, like the whole. Again, not trying. We talk about the Riddler here, but like. The whole Batmobile chase leading up to the Penguin's capture, and then you realize how simple the URL is, but it led all that funny, or not funny, but like awesome stuff happened to get to that point, which was funny.
That was the highlight of the film for me, was the car chase.
Yeah,
dude, that was
100%.
Everybody in the theater was so into that, especially the Penguin. I got you. I stopped, and then
an explosion.
I wasn't sold on the Batmobile. I didn't think it looked really cool in the behind the scenes stuff, but when you see it in action in the movie, and then when he freaking destroys the Penguin's car and starts walking up to him slowly, you're like, this is a badass Batman.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I know. Let's hold off on that because I got a lot to say. I'm with you.
Okay. Well, going back to the Riddler.
Yeah. So I'll just say, for one, Paul Dano, I think his name is, the actor. Mm-hmm. He was in another movie where he played some like mentally ill individual, which was I don't know if you've ever seen Prisoners.
Oh yeah, with Hugh Jackman. That was an incredible movie.
Yeah, exactly, and he was very good in that. So I'm like, maybe they kept their eye on him. But yeah, I will say, in terms of looks, I kind of like, I get it. Like, he doesn't need to be like on the nose in terms of like looking just like the comic book counterpart, but it would have been cool if they gave him you know, like more of a nod to like the Jim Carrey like super orange hair or something.
Oh yeah, apparently they put his glasses in the movie or something.
Yeah, like I saw that. Like I guess that's like a nod because like the similar like spectacle that he's wearing is the one that Jim Carrey's, you know, Edward Nygma wears when he's working at Wayne Enterprises, which is cool if that's like intentional. But yeah, no, I think the guy was super effective, and then like, you know, his posse or, you know, his following at the end, which I was just like, how's Batman gonna handle this?
Right.
But you know, it just shows you the alliance, like the importance of having an alliance with, like, you know, Jim Gordon and Selena Kyle, you know, Catwoman in the end. So it was cool. And by the way, I gotta say, it's so funny, I only just realized this, but this is like the same group of characters from Batman Returns. You got Batman, Catwoman, and the Penguin.
Oh, you didn't realize that until just now?
Well, like a couple days ago I did, because someone did fan art in the same style of like the Batman Returns poster, but it's just like the new incarnations, and I'm like, why didn't I realize that?
Oh yeah, this is totally, they took a lot of elements from older movies. They can even at the beginning of the movie where they had the gang members or whatever they were attack the guy on the train, they had the face paint like skulls, and I wonder if that's like a nod to the Batman Returns circus people with the skull faces, or even
Batman Forever. You know, they got those.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, Batman Forever with the neon. Yeah. But you know the thing about, okay, so Zoe Kravitz, Lenny Kravitz's daughter, I'm a big fan, dude. I love rock music in general, so it's cool to see these people like in a Batman movie. She did a great job as Catwoman, in my opinion. I still think both her performance as Catwoman and Colin Farrell did a really good job as the Penguin. Personally, I still think that both Danny DeVito and Michelle Pfeiffer are just the more iconic portrayals of those characters, and I think a lot of that's got to do with like the Stan Winston effects that they put on Danny DeVito, and like that dude. That dude is a Tim Burton just gruesome character, and he's perfect in that story. And again with Michelle Pfeiffer, she's perfect in Batman Returns. They both do a great job in this movie though, and I think that you told me before I saw it, you were like, this is the movie that handles Catwoman the best as far as story goes, and I completely agree because of the whole Carmine Falcone you know, relation and everything.
Her story, she was so woven into Bruce's story, you know. It was like their paths crossed, and I thought that was really good. And you know, Zoe Kravitz, by the way, my friend is like obsessed with her, so he never really goes out to see movies like this, and he had to film out for her. But no, she did very good, and you know, I'm glad I haven't seen too many you know, movies with her. I mean, I've seen Mad Max, Fury Road. I think there's some other ones that some other films that she starred in, but she did, you know, very well. Like, you know, you can just tell she just wanted to kill everyone when she was to spy. Yeah, and it was, that scene was kind of tense too when she's with the DAs, and she, you know, like the really cool technology that they introduced, like the
contact lens.
Contact lenses. I thought that was cool because that comes back again later in the movie, how like Bruce finds her for help or something. And I thought she did very good, and I liked her story a lot, and they upheld obviously like Batman's motto of, you know, no guns, no killing or anything. And, and I gotta say, this movie, since we're talking about her, I was pretty surprised with how, you know, a lot of movies have to kind of juggle political correctness and stuff like that, and I understand a lot of that, but there was this movie just felt like it had to portray people in realistic situations. And there's that one part when Batman essentially like manhandles Catwoman when he like confronts her for the first time at like
where she's
trying to like steal something from the safe.
I like that.
And she was you know, she held her own, but like, you know,
realistically, he would subdue her. Yes, I agree. They did a good job at that by not like, you know, like, oh, she can handle the Batman. It's like, well, dude, that's stupid for the story right now. You don't need to do that. And like, yeah, I agree with you. I actually really liked the imagery of that because it was kind of tense and scary, and also like just everything. You know, Catwoman is a cat burglar, so she would be doing that. And then
and
they're hiding in the shadows. It was cool. It was very well done.
It was cool, and I was just like, it was cool because like it was what I wasn't expecting, where it was just like, you know, the guy's doing what he's got to do because he's like trying to like, you know, shut her up because she's like she's like so frustrated after you know what she's learned, and then like, you know, you realize
she'd be like, she did shot, and like flip Batman through the window or something.
It was intense because I just wasn't expecting them to go for something kind of like that, but you know, that's always kind of been like the Batman Catwoman dynamic. Like it's always kind of like a dance. I agree. Like the upper hand, and I like that they use that element in this movie because it's kind of like a staple thing that they have going on. And but yeah, like, you know, their chemistry was really good, and it was great how like she relied on him and he relied on her. You know. And,
I'm not the biggest fan of how I'm not going to hold it against the movie, but how it ended, where they kind of go their separate ways, because that felt kind of like, we need to get rid of Catwoman because we probably want to use a different villain in the next movie. I was like, oh, just let her stay. Like, and they go off in their separate ways, and it just felt. It was an unnecessary bookend.
A little forced. Who knows? She might come back. I hope she does.
I hope they do bring her back, because it also seemed a little reckless, like, for their relationship, to be completely honest with you. But because they had a great thing going, they're probably the best thing for each other. By the way, the Penguin in this movie is such a different character compared to like the Danny DeVito version. He's almost like just a smaller crime boss that's a just terrible guy. There's not really, I don't know if he's got like an elaborate backstory in this version, but the fact that he was working under Carmine Falcone for most of the, but I mean, like, Carmine Falcone is kind of like the Max Schreck in this movie. He's like one of the main villains, and we haven't even talked much about him yet.
Yeah, no, I liked what they did with the Penguin, and just kind of his loyalty to Carmine Falcone, but also
lack thereof towards the end.
Yeah, exactly, and it's very, like, you can see that happening with you know, the mafia, and it's so interesting because this story is very modern, but also it has like that classical storytelling and those classical elements of like really good drama between good guys and bad guys and bad guys and bad guys.
Yeah, it's a good mob movie.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, I like what they did with, you know, Colin Farrell. You know, everyone's saying the same thing. You know, like, that was such an amazing performance with all those prosthetics. You know, like, you just wouldn't even realize it's him if they never told you, you know. And
yeah, I did. I was like, that's not Colin Farrell.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's so good, and yeah, I don't know, like, it's like this movie, you know, the creators figured out how to deliver on notes that would ring familiarity, if that makes sense. Like, it's
absolutely.
Like, yeah, like, oh yeah, you know what, I can definitely see this guy being the Penguin. If I had to like go through a group of guys and like Colin Farrell's, you know, character came through, I'd be like, yeah, like, you would be a Penguin in a realistic version of a Batman story. And that's pretty much, I think, how they handled it.
They did, yeah. And it's funny that we're bringing him up because he had a lot of the prosthetics and like similar to Danny DeVito in Batman Returns, which is something I wanted to talk about, is the differences and comparisons that you could make between like the other Batman films, specifically Christopher Nolan, which a lot of people are going to compare this to, but like also a lot of the Tim Burton stuff. And you brought up Joel Schumacher, which is pretty interesting. I want to hear your points on that, but like, it does feel like, to me, they took the grounded approach to Batman, and then they added in a lot of these different elements from the films that we'd seen before in the past.
Right.
And in a very, I felt it worked really well, because when you strip everything away, the structure and direction and story that this movie goes in is really just like a mob movie, like a mob mystery.
Yeah.
But like, they've they've taken the Bruce Wayne character and like injected a lot of just the Kurt Cobainisms. It was really fascinating. But what do you think about the whole comparisons to Christopher Nolan, Tim Burton, Joel Schumacher, etc.?
Yeah, I think yeah, like you're pretty much what you said. I agree. Like this movie feels like a celebration of all that came before it, with the exception of maybe
Batman and Robin.
yeah, or maybe even like the Zack Snyder.
I could feel a little bit of that in the film, like during the action sequences.
Oh well, yeah.
There's a specific moment where it directly emulated both Batman Begins and Batman Returns, where the cops were after Batman and he had to get away. And there's that great scene in the Batman Returns where he's like on top of the thing during the Christmas tree where the girl gets killed, and he like has his big wingsuit go out and like flies over everybody to get away. And this movie did it with like a gliding suit or something.
Yeah, it's like
really cool technology, by the way.
Yeah, that was so good because that was kind of Batman shining, if you will. You know, like it was
absolutely
him, like showing off. Like he's got innovative techniques. You know, he's not just a guy in a tactical suit. Like he's got gadgets, and you know, and then like there's that one, you know, first real comedic moment where he like slams into that bridge, which is what Marvel's riddled with, you know, those like moments.
But it felt a little more earned here.
Yeah, exactly. Is what I'm saying. Like it has much more impact when that happens. And I talked with a friend about that. And we were agreeing about that. You know, it's like Marvel just like it's back to back to back to back. Like,
and it happens to everyone for no reason. This is an unseasoned Batman that just got away from the freaking cops. Like, yeah,
it's a victory and like you know, a fail at the same time. But but to go back, I think the best kind of description. Oh, sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay, because it says connecting. I don't know if it dropped. Anyway, the best description I can get for this movie is it's kind of like Christopher Nolan, you know, the current very grounded storytelling mixed with a lot of you know, like 90s aesthetics. It feels, when I said some of it kind of feels like Joel Schumacher influence, I mean like there's kind of like, you know, Joel Schumacher's Batman had a lot of grunge elements, you know, like the Batman Forever film, and you know, especially just the cinematography is so grand. You know, I liked some of Christopher Nolan's cinematography, but a lot of it also, I don't know, some of it fell flat to me, you know.
It did. Yeah, it felt a little... It's funny you mentioned that, because I can remember back in the day, I was one of the people that was very against the direction he took the trilogy in, because it was too grounded and it almost felt pretentious, like Batman couldn't exist in the world he created. But I do appreciate those films a lot, and like I get what you're saying, because if you go back and look at like Batman Forever, a lot of that movie, especially the scenes where Val Kilmer is talking to Nicole Kidman, and like the you know, in the police headquarters, or even at Wayne Manor, there's a very it's like a grunge music video kind of, which I've mentioned before in the past. It's very 1995, which is funny because that's what this movie is in a lot of ways too, with like the incorporation of the music and stuff. It really does try to sell like a 90s world, if that makes any sense, only grounded with today's aesthetic.
Yeah, 100%. And I mean, you and I are both we both grew up in the 90s,
right?
And you know, so we have those specific sensibilities towards that. And I don't know, I mean, we'll both defend the 90s till the day we die, I think. But you know, but there's just something very unique and special about the 90s, where it's like the renaissance of movie making and grand, you know, storytelling. And this movie kind of felt like it doesn't have to be, because we're not in the 90s anymore, you know, we have to be
right. Yeah, we've moved on.
But it felt like a very a successful homage to that kind of that era
that
of
world. It
storytelling.
captured it really well.
Yeah.
Like it really did feel like, I mean, there's elements of Bruce Wayne here that you can kind of relate back to even like Chris O'Donnell's performance as Robin.
Yep.
Like the darker stuff and how young he was, and like he basically wanted revenge in that movie. And it's funny because this movie really does feel like Bruce Wayne is almost reminiscing of the time when his parents were still alive. And like when he, you know, the whole reason he is Batman is because he's trying to uphold their name.
Right.
And you know, when Thomas Wayne's reputation gets like dragged through the mud later on in the movie, it's a really important thing for the character, because it's kind of like he has to look inside of himself for what direction to go in. But like it's really interesting because the movie, he's not a child, but he misses the world that, and then I think it just plays in really well with the whole Nirvana music. He feels like he's been robbed of the 90s, or which, yeah, that would have been, because he's our age, that would have been the world that was like taken away from him.
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating. They did a really good job at like
the psychology of that guy.
Yeah, the psychology of Batman here.
Yeah.
And again, at the end, that would have probably been around the time his parents got shot, was, you know, 9/11 or shortly after, when he's like saving the people, and there's like the sun in the background. He's like helping with the police, like lift people out from the rubble. There's a lot of depths and like layers to this movie that I think work out really well.
Yeah, it's you know, I think it's safe to call it a mastercraft. You know?
It is. It's great.
Yeah, it's very good. And speaking of like, Bruce Wayne's, you know, his the realization that his parents, or at least his father, wasn't the saint that
he thought
he was. Yeah. There is the you know, that great moment, which, you know, for a moment I like Andy Serkis as an actor, but I did feel for a moment there that he was kind of underused until like Bruce Wayne has that moment with him in the hospital, and that was such a good, like, you know, he did such a great job in acting in that moment when he's in the hospital bed. He fulfilled like the Alfred role in that one, you know, 5-minute sequence. Scene. Yeah, and I'm like, all right, like, he's a great Alfred, you know, like.
Yeah, they did underutilize him until that scene, and a lot is like on his shoulders for that scene to work, and like, because this is the whole thing too, is the movie goes into the gray area of like, not only human beings, but human beings that are politicians, or human beings that are like on the police force, or like, you know, people like Catwoman and Batman and the Penguin. It's interesting because he says your father was a good man. He just had like a bit of weakness, and he never thought that like Falcone would kill the guy.
Right.
And I mean, he paid for it with his life. Like there's a lot of stuff in this movie that's the other thing too, is it's such a brutal world, especially with just dirtbag evil sons of bitches like Carmine Falcone, and also a lot of the people on the police force and the other politicians in the city, and of course that leads into the whole class war problem that the Riddler has, which I do like how these movies, by the way, typically with Batman movies, they'll focus on what's like important at the time. Like I think The Dark Knight was kind of like a Patriot Act discussion, whereas The Dark Knight Rises was totally talking about Occupy Wall Street, and then you've got this movie, which is really like the polarized world that we live in. You know, it's like haves and the have-nots, or the people that, you know, think that they hate everybody that's like out of their earning bracket, when in reality, like it's not so cut and dry. Like Batman's trying to save you guys here, so like it's a fascinating. You gotta trust the
sometimes. It's you know, I think Matt Reeves, if I recall correctly, he wanted to do this movie for a long time, and he you know, he I don't know, I guess he really worked on the script and just the story for all this time, and you know, it shows, you know, it's a great payoff that you know, you get a movie so well layered like this, and it delivers on everything. And we didn't even talk about the Batmobile really.
Dude, the Batmobile scene is like the highlight of the movie, and it's like a combination of that scene in The Dark Knight where like they're going underneath the stuff where like Batman's in the motorcycle and the Joker's in the semi. It's a combination of like that meets just that scene in Batman like 1989 where he's blowing up Axis chemicals and stuff. Like there's a lot of really explosive, awesome, and also like too, that movie made you like pull back and feel like if you were in Batman's shoes, like how scary of a chase that would be. And also this, he's got like a bite to him, man. Like he's got this vengeful sort of attitude when he's on the road, like dodging people and like running people over.
Yeah, dude, I that was such a high octane. Because like the whole movie is so methodically structured. Like I loved how slow it was in Batman. You can just see Batman walking around and just looking and taking mental notes.
Right, you're right.
And that's such a great detective angle to Batman. But it's like that's like the one moment where it's like really like high octane.
It lets loose and just has like full on rage and anger on the road with like death and destruction of all these people like in the car crashes. It was wild, dude. I loved it. I thought that was. I think there's two parts of the movie that really stand out the most to me as far as action sequences go, and that's one of them. The other one is the whole scene where he's trying to protect the politicians from the snipers and stuff.
Yeah,
from the people that are trying to kill everybody. But like, that scene where he's in the Batmobile is going to go down as like one of the most explosive and fun chase scenes I think in the whole Batman franchise. And
it's always been, I love pretty much the Batmobile reveal is always, I mean, with the exception, big deal. Yeah, with the exception, I wasn't like, I love the way it looked in Batman vs Superman, but like that just kind of fell flat until like he bumped into Superman. That was a cool moment.
I agree. Yeah,
but
that's a great scene too, by the way.
No, I know. But like Batman Begins, Batmobile reveal, that was always so fucking awesome to me. Like I just, I love that whole, it's a black tank, and just
and it's like crushing cars and
it's so cool. And like they, that was kind of like the vibe I got with this. And like Michael Giacchino's score just like kicks into like this high percussion, and like, and it's just chasing down a robot. And there's like that really cool camera shot when it's like sitting right on the engine block behind it, and the engine's just like screaming, and you just feel like the engine is like the voice of Batman. He's just like,
like it's coming to kill.
He's vengeance. Crazy. He's coming after his prey, and like that was so good. Such a good scene.
It was excellent. Everything to do with that scene and the way the Penguin gets thwarted at the end, it was just incredible. Dude, and it's coming too, because like when he goes up on the when he goes up on the truck, like back in to like go through the flame, and he's like, "I got you," and you just see him coming. It's like that's Batman. Like you can't stop the Batman.
that's his own demon coming after him.
Yeah,
very good.
Yeah, I think all in all, like we've mentioned a lot of stuff about the way they portrayed the plot and characters already, and how they incorporated something in the way, like in the film. I think there's a great moment towards the end where the Riddler has that collection of rats, and like one of them is a bat.
Yeah, that was cool.
Yeah, and he's got to go in there and get the, stuff from it. But like how they handled the Batman character in this, we've never really seen a younger Batman that, I mean, we've got Batman Begins, but I feel like even in that movie, like Christian Bale's much older than this Batman is, and that's a very different kind of Batman. I mean, Christian Bale is kind of a Boy Scout, that's why his Batman works so well. He's like the only uncorrupt person in a corrupt town besides Gordon and Rachel Dawes, and Rachel Dawes dies, and Gordon, is forced to lie to cover stuff up. This Batman, he's a good person, but he's like, he just doesn't care anymore about a lot of stuff, and he's got such anger and hatred in him. He hates the world around him. He hates the world that was robbed of him, and all that stuff like goes in perfect with his relationship to Selena Kyle. With Jim Gordon was really good in this movie, and the world of Gotham City was such a corrupt hellhole. You could just see he's so cynical. The whole film, just like he just doesn't care about these people and ironically, you can see that the people don't really care about him, and it's not really because of anything he's done. It's just because he's a rich guy, and like they don't give a shit about like the fact that his parents were robbed from him, you know, when he was a kid. And there's a lot of layers to this movie. I can totally see the incorporation of Nirvana was excellent. It was perfect.
Yeah, this is the first time I really felt Bruce Wayne was a really isolated man. Like
I agree completely.
Yeah, you never really, like, even, you know, Christian Bale, and there's nothing wrong with it. Like, you know, there was charisma with Christian Bale in a way where it's like, you know, you would find lighter moments watching his character, but like in this one, you can see like Bruce Wayne, like you're saying, he's just very cynical, and you know, he's also still trying to like figure out, like, that's what I mean with like how he's very synonymous with how he acts publicly as Bruce Wayne and also as you know, obviously Batman. Like I think that's going to be like his character arc, where he's going to figure out how to really wear his actual mask, which is Bruce Wayne, and like play that, which
Christian Bale ended up, you know, doing really well. And
exactly.
Michael Keaton played more of like a tortured soul who, like, he literally only did kind of hang out at Wayne Manor. I mean, he came out sometimes, but when he did, he was like, that wasn't really him. Like, he was just a fake guy.
Yeah.
So like this version of Batman's more of like I think Matt Reeves made Robert Pattinson look into some sort of documentary on Kurt Cobain about the last days of his life.
Yeah.
Which makes a lot of sense, because the Batman that we get in this movie is just like he's so checked out. Like, he's so like just fed up.
Yeah, and it's so well it's expressed very well, you know, even behind the mask. Like, when he's like looking at cops that are like questioning him, like, this motherfucker can't come through here, and like he just looks at them.
He just keeps going.
Yeah, he's just like, I don't care, you know, you're corrupt, like, get the hell out of my way, you know. And and it's so good. Like, it's just a joy to watch him perform in this movie, and just everyone else. Like, Jim Gordon was great, Selena Kyle was great, Alfred, Penguin,
Riddler.
The Riddler,
yards, everything. Carmine Falcone was excellent in this movie.
Yeah, he was great. He's the guy, I forget the actor's name, but the guy from
John Turturro from Transformers.
Yeah, I was like, and he's great, because like even his voice is like kind of like that, you know, that old mob boss, you know, big time mob boss. And a
lot of good humor in there. There's a great part in the movie where he's like, "Don't you think that meant something when your daddy saved me?" He's like, "It meant he took the Hippocratic Oath." And he has a great moment where he like laughs at that.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah, I know.
That kind of humor is just so dark, and at the same time, that's real world humor. Like, that's a screwed up guy would laugh at that. He'd be like, haha.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly, man.
Yeah, so bottom line, Yaroslav, one of the best Batman movies ever made. I think we both agree, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. That, I mean, if you haven't seen it yet, it's a 3-hour runtime, but like, you know, if you have a good attention span, it's worth paying attention to, because
absolutely,
you know, it's such a clever movie and so well made and very layered, and it's a treat, especially in, you know, I'm not saying movies these days are bad by any means, but they're also, you know, priorities lie in like visual spectacle versus like
storytelling,
especially in like the superhero genre. And this,
it's fascinating that we were able to get a 3-hour methodical, like, psychological thriller made in the Batman universe, and nobody tried to chop it up into like a 2-hour runtime or make a whole bunch of CGI crazy stuff in it. It's just like, I think that's, again, it's like watching a Batman version of Seven or something in a way.
Right.
It's very 90s. It's like if 1996 was a Batman movie that wasn't Batman Forever. Like, it would be this.
Yeah, I can imagine. Like, this movie, it's great. You know, I think for me, especially, like, you know, it could have, like we said, like the second final act, if you will, was necessary, but like I could live with that being cut out too, just to, you know, if you wanted a quicker movie to watch, but like it doesn't suffer really from that at all. And like this, you know, it's like, to me personally, it's like an ode to like a good 90s thriller slash you know, adventure film or whatever you want
Absolutely.
to call it. So yeah.